excited to have you come on. You always do a great presentation, Jason, and so you'll be talking about Web Studio.
Hey, Shane, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Glad to be here. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Web Studio as well as a lot of other Citrix features.
Nice, man.
Hopefully, I don't run out of time here. I'm going to set my
Well, you got a
timer.
little extra time, man. So, well, I shouldn't have told you that. Just stay on track, all right?
I'm going to try and stay on track. Yeah, we'll see how that works out.
All
But
right,
I've
cool,
got
man.
a lot to cover, so let me go ahead and present my screen here. I'm going to share my whole screen out so that I can jump easily between different pieces of content here. So let's let me make sure I do that right. Entire screen. There we go. All right. All right. Is that coming in through? Is that working, Shane?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
you're good.
perfect.
You're good to go, man.
Okay,
Good to go.
thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, so my name is Jason Samuel. I'm a group product manager here at Citrix, and I'm happy to be here and talk to everyone about what's going on at Citrix. So today's agenda, I'm going to just cover a little bit of what Calvin covered already. I kind of reiterate a few points there. Calvin covered a lot of great topics there, but there's a few topics there that really impact the product management organization, that impacts you, the customer directly, you, the partners directly. So I wanted to kind of reiterate a few of those items. After that, I'm going to go into what's new with Web Studio. I'm really excited about some of the changes that we're doing with Web Studio, a lot of the new features that we're adding, and what it means for on-prem versus our cloud version. Third, I'm going to get into web apps. I just want to have kind of an open discussion about web apps. And then later on, we're going to get into some of our cloud provider and HCI integrations, as well as some technical dive into what's new with Citrix DaaS and CVAD. It's a lot of content. If you have any questions, don't worry. The slides will be available, and I will cover as much as possible. We'll do a Q&A at the end as well. So just kind of getting into what's changed at Citrix. A lot of folks, you've already seen this with your local CUGCs. You've seen it at some of the larger XL events that we've had. But Citrix and TIBCO are business units within the Cloud Software Group. Cloud Software Group is kind of the parent company. The NetScaler BU, the ShareFile BU, the XenServer BU, they're all different business units within Cloud Software Group, but we're all still integrated. We're still working together. We're all still teammates and so on. So it's just a much bigger organization. And then you have a lot more direct integration actually with a wider suite of things within the Cloud Software Group portfolio. So we at Citrix are extremely excited. The NetScaler team is excited. The ShareFile is excited. We're all working together very closely. So a little bit about some metrics around Citrix as well. I always like to put this slide up. We are used by 99% of the Fortune 500, and those that are working at any of the Fortune 500s on the call, any that are partners that are working directly with Fortune 500s, you realize that Citrix is pretty much everywhere. Five of the largest healthcare organizations use us. 100% of the top financial institutions use us, and then 8 out of 10 of the largest manufacturers worldwide actually use us. Those other two, we'll figure it out. They'll be there too. It'll be 10 out of 10 soon, but they're kind of outliers, I guess. But yeah, pretty much everybody uses Citrix, and we continue to innovate. We continue to be one of the top for pretty much everything that we do. And then as far as how are the changes within the organization are going to impact product management, it's going to impact the product, that's going to impact the customers and the partners, is very positive actually. So the number one thing is going to be accelerated RFEs. So for those of you that don't know, RFEs are requests for enhancements. So it used to be when you requested, hey, Citrix, it would be nice if you would do this one little thing. It would really help the business out if you could just get this one feature or this one little change in the product. You would have to go through a process to get it from your sales team, your technical account team, to the product side, and then prioritization around that. It used to be that there was a very difficult process, in my opinion, to kind of get things pushed and prioritized and get like kind of the bandwidth needed to get things out. Now, with a lot of these changes, we have a lot more flexibility internally, so that when you do have these requests for enhancements, yes, you still do go through the technical team, your sales team, but once they enter the RFE, we have a lot more flexibility on what to prioritize and as far as applying the bandwidth necessary to be able to get that out to you. So that's the number one change that I think is really, really important for 2023 and onwards. That's going to impact you directly as both customers and partners. The other big thing is that we're working very, very hard on being very transparent on what we're doing on the product side. Updates.cloud.com, I'll get into this a little bit more, but that's the URL there. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into it a little bit later in the presentation. But this is actually going to show you what we're working on. You know, stuff that is borderline NDA, let's put it that way, that we're just converting over and saying, hey, yeah, we're dedicating to working on this, and we're popping it out there. So you can go, there's actually 4 different filters that you can use. It'll show you everything that's released on the day of, and then it also shows you stuff that's in development, stuff that we're thinking about, and you can actually give feedback on some of these things as well. So we want to be just very, very transparent on what we're doing at Citrix from the product side. The next thing is that Calvin already touched on this, is the investment on the on-prem capabilities. I'm going to dive into that very heavily today, especially with Web Studio, but you'll notice a theme there, and it's going to be very realistic. It's gonna actually show off what we're doing on-prem and how like DaaS and VDI/CVAD are like pretty much neck to neck, and how we're like closing the gap on anything that that might be missing there. The other thing is around dedicated support, improved support processes. There's been a lot of internal changes that we've done to improve the Citrix support process. I'm not going to go too deep into that today, but just know that you know, that is available. There are changes happening. That's a whole other webinar to cover that. There is a new focus for us on web and SaaS app delivery. So I do want to have kind of an open discussion on web apps and kind of explain what all we do with web apps. In addition, of course, to the traditional published apps and desktops. And then lastly, the Citrix Universal subscription, which is important because when you look at it, you know, like a lot of us on the call right now are technical folks, right? And Universal subscription, you know, we don't really do the sales side as much, possibly, you know, we might not be too involved in it, but it's important to really understand what the Universal subscription is and like the benefits of it and how that impacts your deployment, because it does make really big changes to your deployment as far as the capabilities and feature set that you'll get. Calvin already kind of covered this, but our theme is really to be hybrid, and really in all these different areas shown on the screen, whether it's on-prem or the DaaS offering, our cloud offering, we want to give you the choice to be able to utilize whatever you need wherever it is. So that's where the universal subscription really comes into play. You can run Citrix anywhere, you know, whether it's in your data center, it's in our Citrix cloud service in our offering, or even an IT managed cloud infrastructure, meaning you take your traditional CVAD and you stick it in Azure or AWS, wherever you want to run the control plane. And then as far as the workloads, they can be anywhere. They can be in Azure, AWS, Google, VMware, Nutanix, on-prem data centers, any type of HCI, any type of hyper-converged appliances. We want to just give you the ability to run the control plane anywhere and then run the workload anywhere. And that's essentially what the universal subscription is. Complete flexibility to do whatever you need. And actually, to also be able to do it simultaneously. So you don't need to dedicate yourself to just one control plane and say, oh, well, we have to be in the cloud, or we have to be on-prem, or we have to be just within like AWS or whatever. You can do all of it. It's up to you. It's complete flexibility to do what's needed for that particular workload, you know, whether it's governance, regulatory reasons, air-gapped environments, whatever it is that you have, the universal subscription gives it all to you. So as far as the on-prem deployments, I kind of touched on this a little bit already. Cloud provisioning and hosting rights, the Web Studio on-prem, which I'll get into a little bit deeper. When you have the IT managed control plane, meaning that not the cloud control plane, but the one that you manage, whether it's on-prem or if you stick it in one of the clouds, you'll actually have access to the WEM cloud service, the analytics, security and performance, the workspace service, site aggregation, global app config service, as well as the ITSM adapter for ServiceNow. So if you're running ServiceNow within your organization, you can actually plug in and do a lot of the self-service capabilities there for your users. So that's actually a big one. When you use the DaaS control plane, the Citrix cloud-based one, it gives you some additional capabilities like the Windows 10/11 multi-session capability within Azure, the HDX Plus for Windows 365 that's running in Azure as a service. And then we have the session recording cloud service available to you. You get to use the gateway service POPs, and you get a lot of the app personalization capability that we're releasing. So again, just to reiterate on this, it's just another slide that kind of shows it in a simple way. Access can be anywhere. It can be your traditional storefront. If you got heavy storefront customization already, that's fine. You can go ahead and use that. You've got workspace in the cloud. You've got management. You can choose what type of management you want. You can put your workloads anywhere you feel like. Any types of apps, whether they're published apps, Linux, Windows, web and SaaS. And then as far as the hosting, any hosting platform available to you. Now, the benefits of moving to Citrix Universal, again, we kind of covered this, but just to put it as far as like use cases, it's the feature richness, the compatibility of being able to do anything you need. It's complete deployment flexibility. You can also, if you have a mandate within your organization that all your on-prem services and workloads and everything need to be going through a cloud service or a cloud workload, you completely have that capability. And we actually have a lot of tools available now that actually allow you, like the automated configuration tool, for example, that'll help you do that. You can do hybrid forever. There's no restriction. There's no time limit on this. So in the past, you may have heard of the ability to kind of get hybrid rights to be able to kind of move to the cloud, but then you have to be completely moved over by a certain time frame. This is not that. Citrix Universal means hybrid forever. So if you can run it wherever you need forever, you have full flexibility. There's no time limits on anything. There's no push that you need to get anything into the cloud control plane. You can be on-prem, you can put the workload on-prem, and you can leave it like that for the next 10 years. It's up to you. But it's essentially what we're trying to do is just give you that unified delivery and that flexibility to do whatever you need. And then as far as like disaster recovery and business continuity, we also kind of keep this in mind as well. Like a lot of folks we've seen actually go into the cloud. Sometimes they bring things back out of the cloud, which is it just happens. You try something in the cloud, a workload in the cloud, you realize it's a client server model app that doesn't really run too well in the cloud. You want it to be on-prem, or there might be like a governance reason that you have to bring it on-prem. So we have seen a lot of that, and we will help you actually. There's tools available that we have that'll actually allow you to bring workloads back in, as well as for disaster recovery. Like if you have a colo data center, and in case a cloud region is having an outage, you still have business to do. Especially like certain verticals, like a hospital system. Just because the cloud is having an outage doesn't mean the whole hospital system has to go down, right? So in that use case, we have the ability to continue running on-prem in your own data centers, and just kind of, again, giving you that flexibility to run a workload wherever you need, however you need. So now actually getting into the Web Studio. So Web Studio for on-prem is here. So what this means is that traditionally Studio has been an MMC-based app. So it's always standing up a Windows server, and then depending on the MMC console, and you don't really get a lot of capability. It's not very rich. It's slow. You can't even add pictures, like logos and things that you want to see in there. It's very gray, whereas if you've ever used the Citrix Cloud DaaS control plane, it's very rich. It's always changing. You can throw logos in there, pictures. It's colorful. It's really nice to use. It's elegant, right? So we wanted to have that same experience for on-prem. And so what we did is we actually rewrote Studio completely to where it's using the same REST APIs across the board. So now on-prem and the DaaS-based Studio, Web Studio, are both using the same code base, are using the same REST APIs, and they give you the same experience. So this is now available, and you can utilize it. The install is very quick to do. The installer actually even sets up like an SSL cert for you, the self-sign cert if you need it, things like that that you would have to manually do. It's actually part of the installer, so we make it like very easy to be able to set this up. As far as how it looks, this is how it looks. When you first look at it, you almost think that you're using the cloud-based control plane, and that's on purpose because we want it to be the exact same experience. It's using the same code and the same REST APIs underlying, so that's why it looks the same. We did release this with 2303. There is a blog here at the bottom, link there if you want to screenshot that. That is from April when we released that, and it goes a little bit more in detail into this. And I'm actually going to show you a quick demo video of it in action and kind of walk you through it. So this is actually, let me go full screen here. Thanks to Scott Lane, by the way, for making this video. It makes it a lot easier for me to kind of run through this quickly in the interest of time. But on the left-hand side, what we see here is the actual on-prem web studio. If you look at the URL, it's a self-signed cert that hasn't been trusted. That's why it says not secure here. But you can see here the URL is not cloud.com. You know, it's not running from cloud.com. It's running locally. So if you look at it, it looks just like our DaaS control plane studio, but the reality is it's running on-prem. On the right-hand side is the traditional on-prem studio, and you can see it's the MMC-based one. A little bit grayer, it's a little bit slower. This is actually much faster and much smoother, which is what I'm going to show you in the video. But you know, when you think about moving to this on-prem web studio, the first thing is like, oh well, you know, my ops teams, my technical teams, they're gonna have to relearn things. I'm gonna hold off on deploying this. We're just gonna stick with the MMC because that's what we're used to. Don't think like that. And that's what I'm gonna prove in this video. It's the exact same thing. If you look at all the nodes here on the left-hand side, they all match up here on the left-hand side. Every piece of functionality that is in this MMC is also here, plus you get some additional things that we've added here. So there's no reason at all to stay on the MMC-based studio. You should be moving to the on-prem web studio, which is going to give you pretty much the same experience. There's no retraining of your teams involved. There's no fear involved in needing to move to this. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and run this separately or parallel in your environment. Try it out yourself. Verify it has everything, and then go ahead and teach your ops teams. You know, introduce this, and then don't stop using the MMC based. So just to kind of show you through the video to prove that out, on the left-hand side, we are looking at machine catalogs. On the right-hand side, we're looking at machine catalogs. So I'm going to pause the video there, and you'll notice admin desktop, multi-session. You know, one desktop is created. On the left-hand side, admin desktop, multi-session, one desktop is created. Linux desktop, Win10 MCS, Windows 10. All of those appear here as well in the same way it's displayed here. It's just faster and just a much more elegant experience here. Going over to the delivery groups, you can see it's the same delivery groups. Going over to policies, I don't think one of the policies was recreated here, but you can see, yeah, the high security controls and non-compliance. You can add the policies in here just as you would here. Let me actually see if we have that, the create policy node. And right over here, you can see, and you see on the right-hand side, the MMC actually took longer to even load just that create policy screen, whereas here on the left-hand side, the Web Studio on-prem was instant. So there's really no reason to stay on the MMC anymore. All of this matches up. The feature parity is there 100%. And so we highly, highly encourage you to move to the on-prem Web Studio. Now going into, you can see even just trying to close a node on the right-hand side, it's taking a second. On the left-hand side, this is a feature that is not within your MMC-based studio, and that is this auto migration to Citrix DaaS. This is actually our auto configuration tool, the automated configuration tool. This gives you a little bit of information. So we're going to actually put tidbits of information within the on-prem studio as well to kind of help educate your technical teams on what the capabilities of Citrix are. Traditionally, we have not been able to put any information into an on-prem MMC based studio, even though this is kind of like the nerve center of what a Citrix admin does. You always have to go external to the internet to figure out things from a blog or from a CUGC event or from your technical teams. And it's a little difficult, but we are going to kind of make it this, even though it's an on-prem based console, it's actually going to pull information down and give you technical information that actually help you within your environment. So one of those things is this note about auto migration to Citrix DaaS. This is the ability to be able to take a configuration and export it into the on-prem, the cloud-based control plane. And it also allows you to manage multiple sites. It can actually help you move between dev, test, staging to production, help you back up and restore, like for business continuity and things like that. That's never been available in the MMC-based studio. I mean, the concept of having to do that, you would have to like Google, right? You couldn't even figure it out within the console because it's just simply not there. But now on the left hand on our web studio on-prem, these type of common technical things that you need to do within a Citrix environment are going to be available to you. And we're continuing to increase, we're continuing to develop things there. We're doing it on the every time we do something in the cloud-based control plane, we're also wanting to do it for the on-prem web studio as well, because again, it's the same code base. It's very easy for us to be able to do that. All right, and switch actually out of here, back to the slides. Okay. All right, so as far as the REST APIs, that's a big one that I talked about. If you're doing any type of automation within Studio today, especially the Citrix DaaS-based Studio, you want to be able to use that same set of automations that you might be doing with the on-prem studio as well. So you don't want to re-engineer, you don't want to retool that. So everything that you can do in the on-prem and the cloud are exactly the same exact REST APIs. As far as the studio being kind of the nerve center for everything, we have this new homepage. You may have seen this already with the cloud-based control plane. This is available now. We have some nodes, widgets available on the homepage because we kind of wanted to make this like the nerve center for your whole environment. I can't seem to, there you go, there's the mouse. Okay, so right here is the service overview. What this shows is kind of your whole Citrix estate within Studio. It shows you your machines, your applications, your delivery groups, and it allows you to actually drill into them. You can see the totals here. It's a little grayed out because I've got this this little thing right here, but it shows you, this is actually clickable. You can actually drill into your environment. So at a high level, you always know what's going on in your environment, the size of your environment, the number of servers you have, these machine catalogs, and so on. So it's like infrastructure focused and application focused, really. On the right-hand side here is the thing that you probably get asked the most within your organization. Hey, who's actually using Citrix? Because sometimes it's very hard for somebody not on the Citrix team to understand how much Citrix usage is going on in the environment. Like, let's say the accounting team comes to you and says, hey, how much are we using? So here at just a high level overview, it's not like director, it's not like monitor up here, which gives you very granular details. But here, just overall at a quick glance, you can see the number of sessions launched in the last 7 days. So that gives you a quick glance of usage within your Citrix environment. It'll show you a trend over 7 days. And if you want more granular, you go into monitor for that. But it's just, again, a high level of how the healthy your Citrix environment is. The other thing I talked about was education. Studio has traditionally not been an education source. It's more of you just go in and do work. with the left-hand nodes here. But the home page is something that we use to actually show you features that admins should be aware of within your organization that you are licensed to be able to do. Again, with the Citrix Universal subscription, it gives you so much capability that you may not be aware of. You might have to go to a CUGC event and talk to a peer or a technical team presenting to understand, hey, oh, you have that feature, you should use it, you know? And it's not fun to find out about things that you own and can use at a event. You know, I love going to events. CGC events are awesome. Technical teams are awesome. It's fun to talk. You have to do that, but at the same time, like you should be able to see these things within the console that you use daily. So we have this section here, recommendations, and over time, these recommendations are going to get more and more tuned to your environment specifically. But right now, we have some general recommendations that if it's not enabled in your environment, we'll actually promote up and be like, hey, you have access to this. This might actually be handy for you to turn on. So go ahead and configure it. You can click here, and it gives you more detail on that. Then here at the bottom on the left-hand side, we have the what's new. This actually shares our latest updates about the Citrix DaaS platform itself. So DaaS, VDI, CVAD, we come up with new stuff all the time. And I'll actually touch on updates.cloud.com to really show you like what all we're doing. But sometimes you want to be able to see that type of information right there in the console. You don't want to go out to a different website. You don't want to think about it. So right here in the console, we'll actually show you some of those latest updates. And then on the right-hand side, we have preview features. So preview features are things that are coming, things that we're wanting you to test, like a public tech preview, sometimes maybe even a private tech preview. But we want to enable these features for you, whether it's in your production environment for like a public tech preview, or maybe you might have a staging environment. You want to use a private tech preview there. We'll actually display those to you, and you can actually go ahead and enable or disable them yourself here. Used to be that we'd have to enable them on the back end, but we want to actually give you that feature, that capability to be able to turn them on and off right here. So that's kind of our overall homepage view. It just gives you a lot better view of your estate and gives you a lot more information, a lot of education, not only for the technical teams, but the ops teams. People can look at this, they can see things that are coming, they can see usage, either an increase or drop, a spike very quickly. And it's a good communication tool. Just if one person's eyeballs see this, they can go and talk to the rest of the team and say, hey, I'm seeing this on the homepage. What do you think? So it actually starts, very good conversations within your Citrix teams. Going into the Web Studio on-prem deployment options themselves. So we actually have two deployment options. So we have the traditional deployment where you're the CVAD admin, you're on your laptop or your desktop, you've got the browser open. The browser actually calls over HTTPS, so it's using TLS 443 to talk to the Studio web server. So you've got a server 22 box that's running the Studio web server, and then you get the orchestration service that's running on your DDCs. When you're opening the web browser, it's actually talking to the Studio server, and it's also talking to the DDCs directly over TLS as well. So it's two different sets of servers that are talking, and it's actually pretty quick. We've actually done a lot of optimization. I could go on and talk 5 minutes about that optimization alone, but it's actually very quick. This is the default option, and you should definitely stick with that. Now we also have deployment option B. This is something that is really good for air-gapped environments. That's good for segmentation, like if you're doing network segmentation or even micro segmentation within your organization. This is really good because now the browser that the laptop or desktop you're using to access the on-prem web studio is talking over HTTPS to the Studio web server directly. This is a proxied mode where the web server is now talking to the orchestration service. So your actual internet web browser is no longer talking directly to the DDC. So here, imagine there was a firewall in between and you've only got communication between the web server to the DDC. You don't have to have all your enterprise network segments with laptops and desktops, all the user segments, be able to talk to a server that is so critical, like the DDCs, the orchestration service. So you can completely separate your infrastructure control, your workloads, everything can be over here with a firewall segmented out, and only thing that's exposed is really the Studio web server. And if you really think about it, that's how the internet has always worked. We want the internet web browser to talk to the web server. We don't want it to start talking to other infrastructure servers. So we give you that option again for, if you want, for complex networks, for air-gapped environments. When you have like IT and operational technology, you have like a SCADA control system for those that work in energy, things like that. You want to have separated out. You can absolutely do that deployment here and still use the same Studio web server to manage everything. Some things that are, again, generally available, I've touched on a few of these things, but support for configuration, session roaming, this new proxy mode that I just talked about, annotating an image when updating machines. So when you can actually look at the history of past catalog updates and so on by just, typing in notes there. This is very, very nice feature that really helps with larger teams. Also, another thing that helps with larger teams is tenant support. So you can create configuration partitions within a single CVAD site. So you can have some admins, for example, access only certain objects. Let's say that you have an external support team, like an operations team, that that manages a certain set of desktops for like an M&A type activity. Well, you can just give them access to just that. They don't see everything else, like your enterprise desktops, your enterprise published apps. It gives you a lot more slice and dice capability as far as role-based access control into just certain portions of your Citrix estate. And then we're also actively closing the management gaps between hybrid and cloud. So auto scale, for example, is now available with the on-prem Web Studio 2305. We're trying to get everything exactly the same. There's only a few things that you might see there that are not exactly the same. And then one of them was auto scale. When we initially released this, now we have that available with 2305. So you can do schedule and load-based auto scaling. You can do tag-based auto scaling. On-prem, we were talking about on-prem here. Auto activate cloud capacity when on-prem resources are running low. So this is a big one that customers have always asked for. Dynamic session timeouts, power off delays for VDI delivery groups, force user log offs, and then user log off reminders as well. So you get the complete auto scale capability on-prem with Web Studio 2305. We also have a new search experience in the cloud. So this is a unified quick search. So search in the past has been a little bit difficult for larger organizations with a lot of machines, a lot of machine catalogs. So now we can do searches with filters where it's like match any, match all. It's more, it gives you just the ability to kind of drill down and filter down to whatever level you need. And then it's nice to be able to also be able to copy these filters out to other people on your team, because if you keep using the same, essentially a query to look at machine catalogs and look at particular machines, you can take that query and share it among your team so everybody can actually utilize the same filters if needed. We also have the ability to manage these filter sets. So again, we have the ability to copy it out, apply those filter sets. So here's an example, a remote PC catalog. So let's say that your machine catalog, you've named them as remote. So all your remote PC catalogs, you can just search for remote, comes right up. How about Windows 10 machines? You want to know for licensing purposes, hey, how many Windows 10 do we have? But it has to be the accounting team or whatever AAB stands for within your organization. Like a machine has to be named that. Well, now you can do that machine name and it has Windows 10. So you don't have to go and like export all this data to an Excel spreadsheet and manipulate it yourself. You can do it right here in the console itself. And some other capabilities that we added recently, the VDA upgrade service. This is a big one. I hope I don't run out of time, but I'm going to get into this a little bit. But this is a big one that we've had a lot of popularity on this year. But it's essentially the ability to be able to upgrade your VDAs from the Citrix console from within Studio. We have the ability to create machine catalogs using prepared images. This is a preview feature. We have the shared images available for our Azure-based machine catalogs. We have the MCS workflow to create PVS VMs on Azure. This is a preview feature. We have the ability to switch storage disks from standard disk to a standard drive to save on storage costs. I'll actually touch on this more in the Azure section if we have time to get to it. If not, don't worry. I have all this available online as well that you can look at. And the ability to turn these preview features on and off. Again, before, when we released the Web Studio, we could only see the ability to kind of see what preview features are enabled on your account. Now you actually have the control about on being able to turn those preview features on and off yourself. So if a preview feature needs to be turned off in an environment, like a production environment, you can go ahead and turn it off. But in your staging environment, you want to turn it on and play with it, you can do that. Policy modeling. So this actually simulates policies for planning and testing purposes. This is a great feature, especially for larger environments with a lot of different policies. Modeling, you've kind of done like group policy modeling in the past. You may know that. Policy modeling here is much more robust now. And then the search results, we actually had a limit of 10,000 before. We've actually bumped that up to 30,000 with no impact as far as performance. So these are some new capabilities that we just got out. And then I only have, I think, 3 minutes or so left before, and I think I have a little bit of time for Q&A, but I do want to have a discussion about web apps. This is kind of in line with Web Studio, but it's also kind of gathering feedback from everybody on the call here today. One of the things that we've seen, Chris Fleck had this really wonderful blog out there, and we were talking about internal web apps, how to give access. And we've seen, like, within enterprise organizations, you've looked at like CASBs, you've looked at different types of services to try and deliver internal web apps. But the reality of it is, like, the Citrix environment, we've been like offering internal web apps for like 20 plus years. We just publish it, right? We publish a browser. What's one of the most number one seen published apps in an organization? Within your organization, if you think about it, you might have a browser published out there, multiple browsers for different apps. That and Notepad, because everybody loves to use Notepad as our test bed. So besides Notepad, I think browsers are probably one of the number one most published apps out there. But that's not the best way to publish things, especially when you look at features of like a CASB or any of the other types of like services like out there. I'm not going to mention all the names, but a lot of them offer services that Citrix traditionally has always had, and then we also have a lot of capability that most people don't realize that we have. So Chris actually kind of goes into this a little bit deeper on why you really need an enterprise browser. You want that single sign-on capability. You want that data loss prevention. You want to be able to control the internal web apps, just like we did with published web apps. You want that keylogger protection. You want the malware and ransomware protection. You want the phishing protection, because you don't want something on the local machine, if they click on it, to impact the data center environment or the enterprise environment for that matter, because even the content alone is it's intellectual property of the company. You got to be careful. You want to be able to protect that, and you want analytics on who's browsing what. So these have traditionally been challenges for the environment, and even with the published app, you may not have been able to get all this. So Citrix, we have the enterprise browser, which gives you pretty much everything I just said. We also have the remote browser, which is like a service that gives you a lot of those things, minus the keylogger protection. And then we have the published app, which is what we do through Web Studio today, right? It gives you some capability, but it's not, the most robust solution out there. But still, lots of organizations use it because it's right there in Web Studio. And then lastly, the endpoint. Like, if you just let the endpoint do the thing, well, you don't get any of the security features that you need. So let me just turn this on. Okay. So as far as which browser to use, Scott Lane made this really wonderful matrix, and so I've just kind of borrowed this slide because it really explains things. The Citrix Enterprise browser, the one that's the most feature-rich, is actually part of the Workspace app itself. And I thought I would never use this thing. Honestly, like, I use a laptop, I use published apps, I use published desktops, and I use my virtual desktop. And I'm like, why would I ever use an enterprise browser? Like, I have no need for that internally at Citrix. And then I find myself actually using the heck out of it, because in the Workspace app, a lot of our apps are in there. And that's how I actually access a lot of environments. I don't use VPNs and stuff. I travel a lot. I go to a lot of CUGC events. I go to a lot of customer and partner meetings, and I travel a lot, and I just use the enterprise browser for the most part. I don't do a lot of the published just because the enterprise browser just feels so native. It feels so nice. There's no slowdown. There's no overhead on it. So once you use it, you'll get what I mean. It feels like you're using the local browser. I can't tell when I'm using Chrome versus the enterprise browser and the Chrome that runs from that. It's actually Chromium based. But it gives you a lot of security features like controlling the watermark, the clipboard, the downloads, the plugins, app protection. There's no virtualization involved. Again, it runs completely local. No VPN. I do have VPN capability. I don't use a VPN. I've got a laptop. I run around all the time. I stopped using the VPN entirely. I have no need for it. And again, it's Chromium based. So like I use Chrome as my personal browser usually, and I use Firefox too. I bounce around depending on what I'm trying to do. But for the most part, I use Chrome. And then this enterprise browser is Chromium based. It pops up just like Chrome. And I can use the same plugins if I wanted. I can't tell the difference. So that's the beauty of the enterprise browser. We also have the hosted service on Citrix, which is a remote browser isolation. You don't need the workspace app for this. It runs across a bunch of Citrix managed Linux hosts in the data center that Citrix manages so that there's no threat to your environment at all or to your clients. Thrown away after each session, control the watermark, SSO without VPN, and the enterprise browser is also running on a Linux host. So it gives you just another way to be able to get a browser out to the user depending on your use case. Do you want it to run on the local client? Do you want it to run in the data center with the traditional published apps? Or do you want it to run in a service that's a throwaway that you don't have to worry about security at all? Hosted on Citrix infrastructure. So this is the traditional published apps. You build out your Citrix environment, you build everything, you throw up a bunch of Server 22 boxes, you install Chrome Enterprise, and you publish it. You choose the plugins, you choose the GPO for it, and then it's all up to you to be able to do this. And it's internal access without VPN because it's launched from Workspace, but it's also virtualized. So, it's a decent browsing experience, but it's not exactly native. And some of the SSO options are limited with published apps. So, the users will be prompted again for logins, which, they find annoying. And then the local browser, it's like, it's like the Wild West out there. You get really no benefits with that. So, why am I going over browsers right now with Web Studio? Well, if you think about it, published applications, we browse and desktops. Um, we do those through Web Studio today. The question is, would you like to see it be easier to also publish web applications within your organization? Again, Studio is the nerve center. The Web Studio is both on-prem and in the cloud. Regardless of which control plane you use, would you like to see published apps be part of the Web Studio, web browsers be part of the Web Studio beyond just the published version of the web browser, but really, integrating a lot of the remote browser capability, the Citrix Enterprise browser, some of the admin controls around that? Do you feel like there's a need for that? So I'd love to get the feedback of everybody on the call to kind of understand that a little bit more. And just see if there's something that we can do there to make it easier for you and the admin experience. I believe I am